Good morning. Welcome to our commission meeting for November 12th, 2024. I'm calling our meeting to order. And note for the record that we have a full quorum of commissioners present. Silence your cell phone, avoid embarrassment, and please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. If anybody, any public comment or speaking on any agenda item, please sign in on the back of the room. All right, look for a motion to approve our agenda.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion carries. All right, consent agenda, bills to be paid, personnel actions, etc. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak to any item on the consent agenda? Would any commissioner like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Look for a motion to approve our consent agenda.
So move. Second.
Call the roll.
Benega.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
Kleinberg.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. Moving on to our regular business. First item is a presentation from the Sioux Falls Development Foundation. Good morning, Bob.
Good morning. Can I have you guys pass this out?
Yeah.
I don't have 7, but I've got 6, so somebody's gonna have to share. Well, good morning and thank you. Who would have thought on November 12th that we'd be looking out at sunshine here in November, but it's a great day, so thanks for having me here. My name is Bob Munt. I'm with the Sioux Falls Development Foundation. I've got a short presentation for you guys to look at today, and then happy to answer any questions that you have of me as well. So I'll see if I can maneuver this technology. As always, we have 3-year priorities that we set going forward. They have typically been the same things. So existing business, industry, and retention, that's of course our number one, making sure that we keep those people here that are already here, making sure that they're healthy and productive and profitable. We also do new business attraction, so we recruit companies from the outside to come into Sioux Falls and essentially make this their home. We do that through land development, so we own Foundation Park and then Sioux Empire Park 8, which is kind of on the northeast corner of Sioux Falls. And we also have been tasked with talent attraction, retention, and development as well. So we help to create the jobs. They wanted us to also help fill those jobs, so we recruit talent to the area as well. And one of our newer things that we're starting to get into a little bit more is housing and redevelopment. How do we take a look at some of our older areas of the community and look at kind of reimagining them as to what they could be. Our profiles that we recruit, bio and pharmaceuticals is a big one for us. We leverage the Discovery District on that, and certainly our health care industry, as well as the University of South Dakota, their medical school, leveraging those types of things. Tech, cyber, entrepreneurial, again, leveraging Dakota State University, South Dakota State University, and some of their technology that they have there to make sure that we use them and leverage them when we bring in those types of companies. Warehousing and logistics and advanced manufacturing, that's where we look at mostly in Foundation Park and Park 8 to make sure that, again, we have and leverage the resources that we have there as it comes to transportation, land availability, and those types of things. We target above median wage jobs plus competitive benefits, which is becoming much more of a selling point for us. And then, of course, high-tech facilities and high-skilled workers. Foundation Park has grown a little bit. We have added some acres on the north side of Foundation Park. We now have about 1,100 acres in Foundation Park that we are marketing. I'll show you another slide here soon, but about 45% of that has been sold, and so we're moving forward with the sale of additional property in that particular area. And these are some of the tenants that you can see that are in Foundation Park. FedEx, both FedEx Ground and FedEx Freight are in that particular location. Amazon, of course, Nordica Warehousing, Lineage Logistics, the Avera warehouse up in the northwest corner, there that you see currently under construction that's scheduled to open here this spring. And then CJ Foods. And CJ Foods is actually having a groundbreaking tomorrow. I hope all of you got the invitation to that. If you can stop out and be a part of that, we'd love to have you. They are starting to do their dirt work out there and dig pilings and those types of things. And so that project is finally underway. It's been a patient project for us, but it is underway, and it will be great. Some of our existing industry expansions, these are just a couple of them. Dakota Digital, kind of on the northwest corner of Sioux Falls as well, and then the Furniture Mart. This is actually an older picture that's been done for a little while, but that is a huge building out there, and we helped with that. We had a little bit of an issue with the Army Corps of Engineers with the levee being that close, so we had to work through some of those things, but we were able to help them expand where they were at. Attractions, Share came up from T into the Foundation Park, again FedEx, and then Muth Electric is another one that has completed construction this last year. Foundation Park North, Brookwood Capital, the Owens and Minor Rivera building, that's where they'll be distributing a lot of their hospital gowns and masks and things like that out of that particular facility, and then Avera will have some of their pharmaceutical stuff coming out of there as well. CJ Foods, again, the future site there, and that groundbreaking again tomorrow. Mentioned we purchased some additional ground north of Foundation Park. We also have some additional ground to the east of Foundation Park as well that we can utilize. This is Park 8, kind of on the northeast corner of Sioux Falls. We have one small lot left in Sioux Empire Park East, and then those lots that we have available there as well. Again, larger lots. We don't want to compete with some of the smaller developers that are developing 2 and 3 and 4 acre lots. So a lot of our lots are in that 10+ acre area. Just a couple of pretty pictures. We bought a drone a couple years ago, so we got to make good use of the drone. So we do some nice pictures like this that show us the construction of Bonson Avenue out in Park 8, opening up a lot of that ground there as well. This is the Readiness Center. That's as a ribbon cutting actually tomorrow. Again, hopefully you got that announcement and can come to that as well. Kind of a summary of what we've done over the last several years. You can see we've sold about 700, a little over 700 acres of not just Foundation Park, but also in Park 8. So land that's been sold, the land that's remaining, acres that's remaining, and then really taking a look at kind of really why we do this, and that's to add tax base to the communities that are in the area. So about $858 million in 2024 is the new assessed value, and over 5,300 jobs. So Foundation Park is accomplishing the objectives that we set out to do, which is create tax base and create jobs. A little bit of infrastructure update. This is the infrastructure that we have put in so far. We're able to do that through the Tax Increment Financing District that we developed, and you guys helped us to do that, so thank you for that. But you can see we put in the roads, the sewers, the water, the electrical power. We moved the telephone, or the power lines. We just are completing the gas lines out there now, and so all of that's being completed as we speak, and just in time for CJ Foods to start their operations. And so we're able to continue to market that property as what we call build-ready property. This road, Marion Road, of course, I wish I could reorient this slide a little bit, but to the left is the first part that we did. And that was done a couple of years ago. The orange part was done last year, and then the pink part in the middle is actually the viaduct that's going to be going over the top of those railroad tracks. And as a main arterial street, we have to go over the top of those railroad tracks. And so that takes a little bit more time, as you guys are aware. It takes a little time to acquire some right-of-way. We have to get through some environmental things and those types of things. And so it's a little bit more time consuming, but we'll have that under construction next year and hopefully completed in 2026. It's just some artist renderings of what that might look like out there in that particular area. And then I mentioned too, talent and workforce. A lot of our talent programs are centered around what we call our talent tower. Our talent tower targets colleges, universities, tech schools, people basically outside the region to try to bring them into Sioux Falls to work the jobs that we have. So we do a lot of talent type programs. Draft Day is kind of a job fair on steroids, if you will. We do a lot of work on the campuses of these colleges and universities and tech schools to let them know what Sioux Falls and the region has to offer when it comes to jobs in the area. Talent Thursdays is an online thing, and then the intern Sioux Falls is something that we're really starting to crank up a little bit stronger, because our thought is that if we can get our interns to come to this area and work in some of our companies, they will not only like the company, but they will also like the area. And so we look at trying to keep them here. We engage them with our Young Professionals Network to get them plugged into other people of their age. And really try to get them to see Sioux Falls as their next home. So the Intern Sioux Falls program this next year, we're going to continue to build on that program as well. The development programs internally, we also work with our high schools and our junior highs. Career Connections is a program that we have to get high school kids into our companies to see what they do in those companies, what do they do inside those four walls, what types of skills and talents do they need, and hopefully give them an idea, why are they going to school, what types of things are going to be important for them to know in high school to be able to come out of high school and be able to go right into some of these jobs. So the Future STEM program is our junior high. Reach out to those folks, and we also have capability workshops and second chance job fair for the differently abled here in the community, but also our people in our correction system to try to get them plugged into some of our new jobs here as well. Upskill Sioux Falls, directed at our current employers, taking some of the employees that they have and upskilling them into higher paying positions, doing that with working with STC to help retrain and train some of those individuals that could move into those positions. We have a lot of kind of best practices things going on with our recruitment council. It's 400 HR professionals that share ideas. What's working in their companies? What are some things that they're doing to be successful in recruiting folks into their particular companies? So it's a best practice sharing opportunity for them. We talked last year, I think, about our Health Sciences Clinical Simulation Center. That opened this year, and then Work Sioux Falls is an outreach that we do really with social media, mostly into areas like Fargo, Sioux City, Omaha, Council Bluffs, places like that. Anybody looking to move out of those communities and moving up to Sioux Falls to work some of our jobs. So that's kind of an outreach program that we have there. Just a quick picture of the simulation center. If any of you have not been out there, let me know. I'd love to get you out there to take a walk through there. It's essentially another hospital, and they get training in that hospital. All of the equipment that they use is basically state-of-the-art that they use within those hospitals. And so as students train on those particular things in places like the OR or the emergency room or labs, it is very lifelike and simulating. The mannequins out there are amazing. They bleed, they cough, they do everything that you and I do when we're in the hospital, right? So it's kind of fun to watch that type of thing happen. Win in Workforce, we just got done with that. Again, kind of a best practices sharing that we have every year. This is our Career Connections program. We have about almost 800 students in that with 6 school districts around the region. Intern Sioux Falls, I mentioned that. This is our upskill program. A couple of years ago, we targeted CDL licenses as one of our programs that we want to get more drivers. It was a serious shortage of drivers, and so to date we've helped to educate about 117 new drivers out there to drive our big rigs and transport all of our products. And then from a marketing perspective, again, I'm talking way above my pay grade here because I know very little about this, but Leah Fries in our office does a lot of our marketing, and we have developed a website called Work Sioux Falls. It goes right to siouxfalls.com. We promote it on a lot of the social media outlets that you see there. This is kind of our target geographies and our focuses that we have in that particular area. Again, this is what you'd see if you go to some of those websites and those types of things. So you'd click on this, and that would take you then to our Work Sioux Falls page. So you're able to, again, see all the jobs that might be available in Sioux Falls. This is a campaign that we're rolling out. Actually, as I speak here today, we are rolling this out. Wish you were here. This is an attempt for us to leverage all of you who already live here to try to bring back your kids, your friends, your neighbors, your classmates from college, anybody that you know of that might be willing and able to come back to Sioux Falls. So this is a postcard that we're using that you can send to your friend and say, hey, scan this barcode and take a look at the jobs we have available. We'd love to have you back here. So that's that campaign. We also have a social media campaign that will be kicking off next week with this same theme. And then you'll start to see actually some television commercials here between now and the end of the year, kind of during the holiday season when hopefully all of our kids are back and our families are back and they're taking a look at the television. They'll see that on TV that we want them to come back here. So we'll kick that off here in a little bit. This is the page that they're directed to, so you can see on this particular area here all of the jobs or all the employers that we have listed there. They can click on that employer and it goes directly to their job site, their work job site. So they can see that employer and the jobs that are available within that place of employment. On the lower right-hand side, the 14,634, that's the number of times that people have clicked on those particular employers. So roughly, 14,000, 15,000 people are coming to that website to look for jobs. So very nice to know. The sad part about this, the bad part about this is that once they click on that, then it becomes private information and we don't know if they hired that person or if they interviewed that person, but we do know that they're clicking on that site. So that's a good thing. This is our site selector video box, and I'll show this to you in a minute, but this is what it looks like. We target site selectors, real estate brokers, national real estate brokers with our message to try to get them to understand that it's going to be profitable for them to locate here. So this is kind of what the box looks like. And then I don't know if this is going to work or not. Yeah, okay. So this is how that works. So when they get this box, they are able to open up the box.
Hi, I'm Mayor Paulton Haken.
Paulton Haken gives them a welcome message. Talks about Sioux Falls and how great Sioux Falls is and all the things that are happening in Sioux Falls. This is going to be posted on our website, so you're able to go to our website and take a look at the whole thing. We also have 6 other videos on this particular thing that talk about quality of life, what it's like to live here, talks about Foundation Park and those types of things. So it's really a grand marketing piece that we're going to be using to attract these types of companies and stuff to our particular area, but we're also going to use it in our recruiting of people. So we're going to try to post this on websites at colleges and universities and tech schools and let people understand, we got a pretty cool place here that we want them to come back to this area. All right, and the other area that we're kind of involved with is in redevelopment. You've probably read some information on the Riverline District. We currently have the option on this particular piece of property. We're working with the city to transfer that to them for some type of redevelopment in the future. Again, kind of some of the reasons we're engaged in this thing. Good Sam, right north of the Good Sam building up here on Minnesota. We own property north of Good Sam. It's our intent to take those houses and move those off of those lots and then redevelop those particular lots into some higher and better uses, maybe some higher density type of housing, and really taking a look at how we can start to kind of renovate some of those older areas in the community. So this is just a snapshot of what could be there, right? So once we get control of that particular area, this is a type of development that we might see there or could see there at some point in time. So challenges that we have, talented workforce, always a challenge, trying to get more people to fill our jobs. Certainly now it's more of a skills match than a numbers game, and so matching the skills that are needed within our companies to the skills that these people have coming into the area. We're looking at child care and elder care. How can we paint a better picture here in the region for child care and elder care so we can get those people into the workforce? Housing continues to be, a challenge for us. We're going to continue to address that. Land availability, quite frankly, again, you look at what we have now and we've got, 500 or 600 or 700 acres available and you think, oh, that's plenty of land. Well, when we're selling it in 50 and 100 acre chunks, that goes pretty quickly. And so we have to take a look at 3 to 5 years down the road and say, okay, do we want a next Foundation Park? Do we want to do this game again? Or do we want to focus on some smaller pieces? And so we're having that conversation internally now about how do we find contiguous land? How do we find land that we might be able to continue to develop? And how do we develop infrastructure to those? Resource allocation, we're also running up against some issues with sewer and water. as we bring in some of these larger producers and as we continue to grow from a residential perspective, just the use of water and the conservation of water, the ability to handle sewer, those types of things are all becoming issues that we're talking about now, and making sure that we're ahead of the ball game and not behind the ball game when it comes to that kind of growth and development. Taking kind of some of our cues from places like Austin, Texas, and places like that that have grown so quickly that they haven't been able to keep up. Infrastructure-wise, we want to make sure that we don't get into that position. So we're working with the city on that particular area, and quite frankly, the communities around us. The water that they get just as important as the water we get. So making sure that we have the water capacity to do that. SMGA is doing a conference here in a month or so that they're going to be talking about water and how that affects all of us. And so again, we're hoping to partner with them on that as well. So that, I believe, is my last slide. And oh, I'm sorry, I do have opportunities. So on a bright note, right? Banking, finance, and insurance continues to be a strong piece of the puzzle for us. Cyber technology, cyber sciences, advanced technology, those are all within the realm. Healthcare and biomedical, again, being as strong as we are in that healthcare field with the hospitals that we have. We are at the intersection of two major interstates. It's a great selling point for us with Amazon and FedEx and all the distribution facilities that we have. But also advanced manufacturing, taking a look at how we can continue to use our graduates and use our talents here to bring that advanced manufacturing in. And there's a couple of examples up there of some really advanced manufacturing facilities that are kind of leading the way in this particular area and kind of giving us an example of the types of companies that we want. And then working with Southeast Tech as well as Mitchell Tech and Lake area on developing the skill sets that we need for those advanced manufacturing areas. And so making sure that we're, again, ahead of the curve when it comes to the types of jobs that we're going to have in the future to fill the types of industries that we want to recruit in. So now I have questions. So any questions of you guys?
What we do first, Bob, is we take public comment. Anybody from the public like to comment on this agenda item? All right, now I'll turn it over to questions from the commission. Commissioner Kipley.
Bob, just thank you for.
I always hesitate, Joe, when you ask a question, but go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I always give you the tough ones, sir. Well, Bob, I do want to blame you because you're too good at your job and recruit too many jobs to the community that we're growing so fast. So you are probably the reason. I hope you stick around for a couple more agenda items because we're redoing our comprehensive plan for planning and zoning as we grow out into the county from the Sioux Falls area. So I guess my question in that is, what is the relationship like with, especially when we think about Foundation Park, how when we did our last comprehensive plan, that just wasn't there yet. But now as we're working with communities like Crooks and Hartford and Sioux Metro Growth Alliance, can you just describe some of those relationships and how do those smaller towns feel getting economic development coming their way? Yes, it provides jobs, but maybe there's a clash of cultures there too. And just what's the outlook for kind of Crooks and Hartford, the most immediate communities to Foundation Park?
Yeah, well, economic development is a team game, and when you look at how communities around us are affected by what we do and how we're affected by what they do, if you're honest with yourself, that's true, right? And when we look at development here, we know people are going to live in Hartford, they're going to live in Crooks, they're going to live in Del Rapids, they're going to live in other places outside of Sioux Falls. That's fine with us, right? And I think also now we're starting to look at working with some of the smaller communities around us in, some industrial parks, those types of things, right? So an industrial park in Hartford is not going to look like an industrial park in Sioux Falls, of course, but really taking maybe a 100-acre parcel and trying to decide how can we work with Hartford to build that particular park, use our expertise and maybe some of our resources to help get that started so that we have another option to use when it comes to where we locate companies that are looking to locate into this area. Sometimes Sioux Falls is not the best spot for them. It's more expensive, it's maybe too congested for them, whatever the reason may be. So we need to look at places like Hartford and Del Rapids and some of the others and make sure that we have opportunities there that we can work with them on. We work closely with SMGA. Tyler and I meet at least a couple times a month and talk about what's happening in our particular areas. So we're trying to kind of approach this as more of a team game than as an individual game.
Yeah, I appreciate that perspective. And then some of that's pretty qualitative, but then the quantitative slide I took is, taking Foundation Park from ag value in 2017 to $858 million of assessed value in 2024. I think as we as a body continue to struggle with our constituents not liking property taxes, I think you're part of that answer, and I think we have to be able to message that to the community of where future economic growth does defray property tax in the future. But that's, I guess, more of a comment than a question, but I appreciate the pro-growth strategy to help our taxpayers.
Yeah, and defray might be a term I wouldn't use, but we certainly help that particular picture and providing more taxes that we can use to provide the services that everybody needs and deserves. So I think we try to add to that property tax base so that you have more to work with to serve your clients.
Any other questions, comments? Bob, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
My only comment on taxes is it's hard to fund government off of rooftops, residential. We need commercial development because that's where the property tax is.
Yeah, 100%. Again, we're very pleased to be working with you guys to help do that. And by creating those jobs, hopefully we create those rooftops that you're looking at too. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
Moving on, first reading and authorize auditor to publish notice of public hearing on December 3rd, 2024 to rezone from the A1 agricultural district to the C commercial district, the property legally described as the west 546.61 feet of the south 356.16 feet of Tract 1 Johnson Tracts in the south half, southwest quarter, Section 7, et cetera, et cetera. Do I have to read all that, or do I just like reading all that?
No, it's probably best that you do read it.
Okay.
Good morning. I'm Kevin Hookman from the County Planning Department. Yes, this is a rezoning. It's approximately 4.5 acres of A1 agricultural land, and it's a part of a larger property. Maybe you can scroll down here, and there's the location map, approximately where it's at. The property immediately adjacent to it on that west side is 47230 258th Street, and that's already currently zoned commercial. And the property owner is planning to basically expand what they're doing there, which is an electrical contractor's lot there. The Planning Commission first heard this item on October 28th, 2024. The item was passed unanimously as part of the consent agenda. And I guess this is just the first reading and to publish a notice and to set a hearing date. Staff is suggesting that December 3rd at 9 a.m. be the hearing date for this to publish. And that's where the public will be invited to speak to the item. Is there any questions?
All right, public comment on this agenda item. Questions from the commission?
Mr. Chair, I'll make the motion to publish the notice of public hearing on December 3rd.
So we will have a public hearing. We have a motion for a public hearing on our first meeting in December. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, additional comments? I'm looking here. Call the roll, please. No, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All righty. Moving on then to Envision 2045 Comprehensive Plan Update. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Scott Anderson, Planning Director, and I wanted to give you a sort of update on the progress in the adoption of our new comprehensive plan. And it fortuitous that we have had a really good discussion today already on growth and opportunities. And what I'm going to talk to you today is going to sort of fit right in that theme, because what the comprehensive plan really does is sort of lays out the future for how we can accommodate growth in the county. And I will, before I get into that, let you know that our previous comprehensive plan was adopted in 2015, so it's been about 9 or 10 years. And as is typical with these type of plans, they go through a periodic update, and we are updating our comprehensive plan to keep it relevant and to address issues that have risen to the surface over the past 10 years. And as we're all aware, housing and growth is one of the issues that we is on the forefront of the community. And so it is really a good thing that we're updating our comprehensive plan, and I will go through a couple of slides with you. Let's see if I can get this. So if you, Trish, would advance that. So a comprehensive plan is made up of many different chapters. A lot of the chapters are basically informational and laying the groundwork for providing an understanding of how the community is put together, basically. So these are the chapters, and we went through and worked with the Planning Commission, and staff revisited each chapter. We prepared updates to that chapter, revisions and additions, and we presented it to the Planning Commission for their review. And so let's go on now. Probably one of the primary issues that we needed to deal with is growth, residential development, and density. And so a density task force was set up by the Planning Commission chairman, and the members of that task force are listed on the screen, and they contained they consisted of members of the community, people that were involved with development throughout the community, such as Bob Munt, who you just heard from, but we had other people as well, Paul Kosbooth, that deals with more agriculture development, Joel that works with South Dakota or Sioux Falls housing, trying to think what the word is, home builders. He works with home builders. We had other like Tyler who works with Sioux area growth, metro growth. So there was a number of people that represented a constituency of different groups. We met 3 times, and the next slide will go over some of the outcomes. One of the more interesting outcomes, really, of that density task force was a really in-depth discussion on accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and what that might entail for the county. There's a lot of opportunity for how we could deal with increased providing additional housing within the county. And we have been getting more and more requests for the option of accessory dwelling units. And those run the gamut of I need housing for a relative that can no longer take care of themselves. I need housing for someone that may be helping with a farming activity. So there's a number of different options. And so we looked at amending or putting wording in our comprehensive plan which would further or more clearly identify accessory dwelling units as an option. And for everyone at home and in the public, the comprehensive plan just lays out the framework. We will need to come back later and actually amend our zoning ordinance to put in the framework for how we will deal with accessory dwelling units. However, it's important that the foundation is put in there for the understanding and the concept of what we would anticipate for accessory dwelling units. And at this point, I want to also acknowledge that we have some experts or some people in the audience that have a very keen interest in accessory dwelling units and would like to also talk to you today. And that is Summer Jha with the AARP. He's going to be addressing some ADUs. And then we also have Eric Gaikowski. He's the director for the South Dakota AARP, and Lindsay Holmquist. She's the director of communication and outreach. So at this point, I'd like to invite them up to talk a little bit about accessory dwelling units and the importance, and maybe trends that they see in South Dakota and nationwide on accessory dwelling units, because this is going to be a significant change on how the county has dealt with housing before. We've never really allowed accessory dwelling units, so it's something that we're going to have to wrap our heads around and really look at this when we start amending the zoning ordinance on how it's regulated, how we want to deal with it. So at this point, I'll ask them to come up and give you a few words of their expertise, and thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Summer. I'm from ARP's national office from DC. I lead the local and state housing advocacy for our 53 state offices. And I have the privilege of working on housing, local and housing advocacy issues, and I see the trends that are happening across the country. So this is just a timely discussion, and I'm glad that the previous presentation that happened did discuss a little bit about that. And in fact, the first presentation did show you some pictures, which I will be discussing how it works with that. If I can just... All right, this would be the content of the discussion, and I will go through most of it. ADUs will be the most important thing that I will be discussing, but there'll be other aspects of housing that I'll also discuss, because in our housing advocacy, we do work on various different issues, including zoning, and our work does not only stop there. That's why this first slide is something I always, when I'm talking in different forums, I talk about, because housing is obviously not a monolith. You know, if someone comes to you and says, let's solve the housing crisis, the next response should be which part you're talking about, because you know, you have property taxes, you have zoning, land use, fraud and financial exploitation, institutional investors coming in and buying property. So there's so many different issues to take care of. But as of now, right now, we'll discuss land use and zoning, which is in discussion. We already saw this picture, which was there in the previous presentation. ADUs, as the name suggests, is just an independent unit, which can be either attached or detached in the same property. It's not a new concept. A lot of people don't know that there's a trivia that the most famous person to have ever lived in an ADU is Fonz from Happy Days. Because if you have seen that show, he lived in an above garage apartment. So it's a 1960s show. So ADUs was available at that time. In fact, The Great Gatsby, the novel, it's a 1920s novel, actually refers to an ADU. Not the term ADU, but refers to a house which is behind the primary unit. So it's the 1920s novel. It's just that between 1950s till now, the conversation was lost. A lot of people did build ADUs, but most of them are illegal. If you have seen it in different parts of the country, you may have seen it, but a lot of the counties, a lot of the local and state government do not allow ADUs. But why do we support, from ARP's perspective, older adults? It provides an independent living space for older adults. If they want to downsize, they can, if they have a 3,000 square feet house, they can't maintain it, they can downsize to the ADU. That's one of the reasons. The other one can be if you have a caregiving requirement, you can have the caregivers live in the ADU. You also have, in this day and age, the kids may have a tough time finding a house. Before they can find a job, but finding a house can be tough, and at that time they can actually live in an ADU while they look for a house. So there are multiple reasons why we support ADUs. Another reason is it can be extra source of income. If you want to rent out, you can downsize and be in the ADU, or you in the primary unit and rent out the ADU. So there are multiple reasons why we support ADUs. It's been a national discussion now. We already have had discussions with the White House, coming up briefings on housing supply. And when they were talking about housing supply, they were talking about ADUs, manufactured housing, and other housing options. And we have had a lot of publications also come out from our perspective, which I will discuss later. And White House also came out with fact sheets on how housing supply has obviously gone down. There's a huge demand, but the supply is not meeting with the demand. And I just want to preface one thing, that ADUs will not solve the problem. It's a solution, There are multiple solutions you need to address in terms of the housing crisis, but this can be a good start to have allowing ADUs to be built more frequently. Typically, when we are negotiating any ADU legislation across the country, these are the 4 issues which will usually typically come up. Even most probably, if when you all are discussing it, these are the 4 issues that may come up. The first one is owner occupancy requirement, where lots of times in different jurisdictions when we were negotiating, they had requirements such as that the owner has to live in both the properties, both ADU and the primary unit. It can be a little restrictive if you do that. A lot of users of the ADU may be lost. Like, for example, you can't have the caregiver live if you only allow familial relationship live there. Similarly, if you have more restrictive covenants in your property, financing and refinancing may be an issue, because the bank may not give you the capital that's required because you have restrictive covenants. Similarly, parking requirements. Now, parking is like an emotion in this country, so I just am very careful when I talk about parking. But we do recognize property rights, and we usually have a position that let the homeowner decide whether they need mandated parking or not. So that's one of the things that you may have discussion in an ADU legislation. The other one is conditional use permitting. Typically, we would love to have ADUs by right. That is, it's your property. You should be allowed to build an ADU without any hassle. A lot of times you'll have discussion where you may require public hearing. Now, we typically do not like that, because then you can have your neighbor coming to the public hearing and saying, if the neighbor does not like you, coming there and say, you cannot build an ADU because it restricts my sunlight or something like that. Inane reasons that can be given just to avoid, just to stop someone from building an ADU. So those are the things that will come up. The last one, short-term rentals, increasingly has started now coming up in this issue. Especially in places where short-term rentals a lot of them are available. ADUs can be used for that. Our position typically is that we would not want a lot of restriction on that. Having said that, we understand that short-term rentals can pose a lot of problem if you allow ADUs to be used as short-term rentals. So we typically say do not have a blanket mandate, removal of ADUs as short-term rentals. However, there are times when you need essential workers moving into your community who may need that short-term rental for 30 days or 15 days. Typically, an Airbnb or Vrbo is a weekend, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. But these transient, people who come in, like essential workers moving into your community, may need permanent housing, but while they look for permanent housing, they may need that transitional housing, and ADUs can play a small role. So it may be wise to not have a blanket ban on short-term rentals, but have a certain day limit to that. Currently, at the statewide level, these are the states that have passed the legislation at the statewide ADU. It's 11 of them. More recently, Colorado, Arizona, and Massachusetts did that, and Rhode Island did that. But at the local level, there's more traction happening, as you can see. I'm not saying that it's easier to pass a local legislation than state, but yeah, sometimes it can be a little tough to pass something at the state level. But at the local level, there's more traction happening. People realize that ADUs have become really, I wouldn't say an important solution, but a solution for housing, for the housing crisis. So you see more and more states, local governments realizing that. We do have publications on ADUs which have been used. That picture that you were looking at was from one of these publications. And we also have a model in state and local ordinance, which has been used in different parts of the country as the ordinance to pass a legislation. It's a model ordinance. The word model is really important because it can be customized to the specific jurisdiction. It doesn't have to be same as what we have, but it's important that every state, every local jurisdiction customizes it according to their community. So, middle housing is also, we already discussed in the first presentation, if you saw the picture that was given, which says that a row of single family houses will be removed and the building will come up. That is a perfect example of middle housing. Middle housing basically means not a single family home or not a tall building. Something in the middle, which can be triplexes, fourplexes, duplexes, and so on and so forth. That was a great example that can be visualized how a middle housing looks like. We do support that because it creates a housing option for older adults, and they can use, if they want to move into that kind of housing, they can do that. So a lot of times in this country, at least 3/4 of the land in this country is single family zone, which makes it very exclusively single family zone, which makes it difficult for multifamily housing to be developed. Now, what we are saying that what we support is that allowing multifamily zoning in single family zoning also. We're not saying we are eliminating single family zoning. We are just saying that along with single family, you can have some multifamily zoning, multifamily housing also. There are various reasons why we support middle housing. It meets the housing needs. It does have lower costs compared to a single family home or a condo or tall buildings which have their own HOA requirements. It does preserve neighborhoods, making sure that people can age in place. And one of the most important things is that it creates an ecosystem of livability. As we were talking in the first presentation, creating gentle density doesn't create a sporadic increase in density. It just has a very controlled density increase, which will allow for other businesses to also set up shop. It's very simple economics. If you are a business owner and you want to set up a coffee shop, you will have to see how much of footfall is happening in your shop. And if your neighborhood has a number of people that can come to your coffee shop, then only you will open that coffee shop. So middle housing and creating that kind of development does allow for other amenities to walk in. And we really support walkability, and we support like a person can walk to the nearest grocery store or to the coffee shop or to the health center that's available. At the statewide level, these are the states that have passed some sort of different forms of middle housing. I will actually, do talk about Montana recently, which had passed the comprehensive land use bill, which is pretty good because it was less preemptive. It basically gave a menu of options to the local government, saying these are 13 zoning changes that you can do. Out of 13, you can do 5. Once you do 5, you will get state funding for that. And it included aspects of multifamily housing, allowing multifamily housing in the local jurisdiction. So that's a great example of how state governments is trying to help local governments also pass middle housing legislation. But again, at the local level, there has been a lot of traction where different states have passed, different local jurisdictions have passed middle housing legislation. This is not a comprehensive list. It's just an indicator just to show that there is a lot of traction happening across the country. Again, we also have publications on middle housing, a couple of model ordinances, which provides guide for local and state governments to look at how they can change their local zoning or state zoning code to include middle housing requirements. Lastly, I'll just go through, we also do support transit-oriented development. It is a form of middle housing. What we basically support is that as older adults, they're growing old, they rely less on use of the car. So having transit close to their house is really helpful for older adults. If they live near public transit. When I say public transit, it's not only railways, it's just a bus route or anything that older adults can use other than the car. So we do support TODs being developed across the state, or allowing TODs being developed across the state or the local jurisdiction. Again, at the local and at the state level, we have had some form of TOD legislation being introduced across the country. And last thing I would say is that we do support universal design in housing. That's a given because for older adults, aging in place is really important. We do want universal design aspects in the house so that they can age in place. And we are working on a model ordinance on universal design ordinance. But again, I don't want to delve a lot into it. If you want, I can have more discussion on that. But we do want at least new residential, developments that are happening to include universal design aspects, because we understand that retrofitting any older building is very tough or it's expensive. but at least the newer buildings can have a universal design aspect so that people can age in place. The other zoning initiative, we do work on manufactured housing and tiny homes. I just want to clarify, tiny homes, and a lot of people use tiny homes and ADUs interchangeably, but they are very two different concepts. Under the zoning code, ADU is, as the name suggests, accessory to the primary unit, whereas tiny home is a standalone single-family unit. So just wanted to clarify on that front. And I just wanted to say, I was looking at the plan, the draft that's there. We do support the ADU aspects that it's been discussed, and they are discussing on that. And I'm hoping that the county will look into the ADU aspects. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Scott, do you have more presentations? Okay.
I'm sorry if you didn't cancel the thing.
So let's see if we get this moved here. So we have gone over the last couple things I want to talk about, which really going to change in our comprehensive plan, is how we're looking at dealing with transfers of building eligibilities. As you're aware, we have that is one of the major concepts that we deal with on a regular basis, is people transferring building eligibilities. The task force recommended that instead of having it only be able to be transferred between the same property owner, it would be opened up to allow to be transferred to adjacent property owners, but different adjacent properties, but could be different property owners, which will streamline the process and make it simpler for people to transfer building eligibilities from one parcel to the next parcel. So the next slide. Importantly, also, the Density Task Force Subcommittee looked at setting up some zoning criteria which potentially could be useful for the Planning Commission and the County Commission to use in considering rezoning requests. And the next slide, I think, goes over some of that criteria. This is what they are proposing, and this, once again, would be discussed when we have our public hearings, and things could be added yet in the Planning Commission or in front of you, in front of the County Commission when we have our final adoption. But some of the guidelines we're looking for is we would consider rezoning properties that are 40 acres or larger in size to a residential use. That if it met some criteria, like it would need to have a road district. It would need to have direct access to a state or a county paved highway. The maximum lot size would be not larger than half an acre. We're looking for density, not estate lots. The development would need to have access to water. We would make sure that it's not developed within a 100-year floodplain, and that it has stormwater capacity for stormwater management. So the next slide. So I'll go through these relatively quickly, but part of the comprehensive plan update dealt with population and economic analysis, and we looked at those, and those trends were updated as well. The next slide, I believe, talks about, shows some population projections, and we're looking at a 2045 population projection of 250,000. And this is no surprise. The city of Sioux Falls will consist of the majority of that population. And that's the portion of Sioux Falls that's located within Minnehaha County. Certainly the city of Sioux Falls will be much larger than that. However, about 1/3 of the city of Sioux Falls will likely be in Lincoln County. So we looked at land use and updated the history of our land use, changes in land use throughout the county, and then we looked at some residential and agricultural and commercial industrial trends. Those were covered. The next slide shows some of the existing land use. The light green and tan basically shows the agricultural uses. The county is overwhelmingly agricultural in nature, And that is an important economic driving factor for the county, is the production of agricultural goods and services. The next slide talks about building eligibilities. We average about 50 to 55 building eligibilities used annually. There are several thousand, and we'll go over those. We anticipate in the next 20 years using an additional 1,000 building eligibilities will be used. That's about that 50 per year that we're using. This shows historically the trends of how building eligibilities, how many were used for various years from 1990 to the present. So the next slide, we talked about some growth management issues, and this is where we put in that criteria for residential growth. The next slide, and we'll be wrapping this up. This talks a little bit about the size of farms. We were able to update the size of farms from 2012 until 2022, and you can see that overall the size of farms and the number of farms are going down, except for the farms that range from 180 to 500 acres. That went up over that last 10 years. As I indicated, this is the location, the growth management is where we would be implementing the residential zoning criteria that I outlined. And we looked at some conservation subjects like historic preservation, the farming and housing density, and the next slide goes over, there are approximately 8,600 building eligibilities available, and as I indicated, we use about 50 to 55 a year. The rural conservation was that we would like to maintain a density zoning. We're not looking at changing, adding 2 building eligibilities per 40 acres. We're leaving that at the 1 per 40 acre. We're looking at continuing using cluster development and transferring those building eligibilities when possible to create smaller subdivisions. And then we are considering changing how we are transferring those to allow transfers between contiguous properties, but potentially different property owners. The environmental stewardship we looked at, water, wastewater, parks and open spaces, stormwater management. This talks about our parks and recreation opportunities throughout the county, listing where there's state and federal and local parks. The environmental stewardship, we updated the fact that in 2017 we repealed our drainage ordinance. We continue to work with stormwater management, and we use best practice measures, best management practices when we looked at rural subdivisions to make sure that we are looking at having adequately sized capacity for stormwater events. We know that's important because we just went through in June a huge event, and we can see that that can cause damage if it's not properly planned for. And then finally, I think we're wrapping up here. We looked at some transportation. A lot of this is monitored and regulated by the Federal Highway or Transit, or like the Sioux Falls Regional Airport, but it is identified and addressed within our comprehensive plan. And this goes over the functional transportation system that we identify. We work closely with the county highway. Of course, they do their planning for their own infrastructure and streets and highways. So I think we're wrapping up. The future land use, we looked at maps and some planning corridors, and there's going to be a map next that shows where potential corridors could be studied, transportation corridors and land use corridors. This just identifies where we feel growth could be occurring along these corridors, and they're, of course, along our major highways that spider out throughout the county. And then implementation, we look at the zoning ordinances and different ordinances that we have. We looked at those planning corridors, and I think finally we look at the building code, floodplain management. Those are all updated. And then the zoning ordinance, of course, will need to be updated to reflect some of the changes we've been talking about with building eligibilities and ADUs. Finally, I will tell you that we had our first meeting last Thursday in Del Rapids. I would say we had an okay turnout. We had about 10 people attending the meeting. We have a couple of more meetings. The next one is this Thursday in Brandon, and then on the 21st is in Hartford, and those are at 7 o'clock. And so the Planning Commission has set a hearing date. Once we have our public input meetings, they will be having a hearing on the 25th of November. And at that time, we will be considering the adoption of the comprehensive plan by the Planning Commission, which would then move it into a formal public hearing in front of this board, the County Commission, sometime likely looking at January, unless you really want to move it ahead. But I know that December we have a shorter meeting month in December, so I'm looking in January. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. I do have Bob Munt is here, and Bonnie Duffy. They're on our task force, our density task force. But I'd be glad to answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, before we go to questions, we go to public comment. Anybody from the public like to address this agenda item? All right, moving on back to the commission then. Commissioners, questions, comments?
Mr. Chair, thanks, Scott. This was a timely presentation. I appreciate the opportunity to pull my 4 other colleagues into the joy that is planning and zoning. But I did have a follow-up question from our guest, Summer. Appreciate that. I think most of our focus is on the housing element of this, but could you also speak to just from a healthcare angle, and whether it's the ADU or other accessible housing? I'm sure you see it all over the country, but there's also a lack of, especially in rural areas, lack of nursing home care or assisted living, and if we could do more home care, that might alleviate some on the health side.
Yeah.
If you could just speak to that a little bit.
Yeah, so obviously we saw the nursing home crisis during the pandemic. That was pretty bad, and then even today we seem that by choice no one wants to go to the nursing home, but if you have a choice of having something in the house or in the property where the caregiving can be taken place, so it plays a huge role when it comes to ADUs, that the HBC, the home-based community services, right? So if you can have that kind of services being provided in the house itself, where either the caregiver is living there, or at least the person who needs caregiving can stay in the same property. From that perspective, this kind of housing changes is really helpful. The other aspect is also supportive housing. You may have heard that term being used a lot of places, where a development that is being done, like a middle housing that I was talking about, if there's some development being built, if they can also have supportive housing along with that development, for example, any healthcare centers in that development, that can also solve a lot of issues where older adults can. I'm not talking about seniors housing that lots of people talk about. I'm just talking about where there is a combination of young and old people also living in one place, but you have these services also attached to these developments that can play a huge role in healthcare services, accessible healthcare services within the development. So, yep.
And Mr. Chair, I'd just love to appreciate that Bonnie is here, and if I could ask her to come up and just could you give us any summary of the task force that you got to pull together, and just what other density issues came up, and if you'd have any insight from I always rely on your institutional knowledge on the Planning Commission, but.
Good morning, Commissioners. Bonnie Duffy. I was in the process of helping select the committee itself for density zoning. I think we tried to make sure that we got people from all aspects within the county. I've had some comments, though, that maybe we should have added more people from the ag community. I guess, like I said, it's 2 of one or 6 of another. It goes with anything. I mean, I think the committee itself validly put in some really good comments on what maybe changes should be made. Don't know all the time if that works or not. I think it's a process. The planning staff, I think, did a good job of going through all the chapters of whatever that is. I mean, you all are well aware that it's quite complex as it is, and as we get bigger, it's probably going to be more complex as time goes along. I think that they covered most of what we could at the time. We only had actually 3 meetings, and you as I well know that everybody has commitments. So for some meetings, we had part of them, and then the other meetings we had the rest of them, so to speak. I was very happy to be part of all of that. I mean, I think as chair, and I have always wanted to know what's going on. I don't like to be blindsided at all by things after the fact. That's just who I am. But the committee itself, I think, did a really good job along with the staff. As time progresses, we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I just think getting this on the community's radar to hopefully attend more of these public sessions. We've still got the one in Brandon and Hartford, and then obviously we'll meet as a planning commission body and then as a county commission body. So there's multiple venues for public input on this. And yeah, we purposely scheduled some of those out into the smaller communities to try to get some more of that ag-based input. And I think when you start talking building eligibilities and density and certain zoning things, it does get people's interest. And I'm just a believer we tried to get that feedback ahead of time rather than in the heat of a conditional use permit hearing where there's a faction against a faction. It's nice to the idea of a comprehensive plan is to set out the objective rules of the road ahead of time that we can all agree these are the principles we're trying to apply. And then when it gets applied to a particular set of facts, we can try to be as objective about it as we can. But sometimes that's easier said than done, I'm sure, in your experience as well.
It is. And even these meetings, like Del Rapids, there was only, I guess, about 10 people that attended. I will attend the one in Brandon because that is kind of my community. I mean, I live in that community itself. You just never know how responsive people are going to be to those meetings. And I've been on several task force over the years, and it's all about what the community really steps up and, voices their opinion. I mean, that's what this is all about. I mean, it helps us make up a plan. I agree with you on some aspects. We just have to kind of wait and see how it transpires.
Thanks, Muddy. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? I guess I do, and it might be Bonnie, it might be Scott that could talk to this, but I look at the residential zoning criteria, and my question comes from my years on the city council when I spent a lot of time talking about those islands of developments that the city grew around, and Pine Lake Hills would be a great example. So we're talking, one of the criteria is the last one, development is within or adjacent to the transition area of the future land use plan. I mean, wouldn't that be an annexable property anyway? Why would they want to develop something that, and avoid annexation? I'm like I said, I'm trying to look at more.
Well, it could be annexed into the city or one of the smaller communities, but that transition area is a fairly large area, and it could be a while before the city of Sioux Falls or one of these smaller communities reach out there. But we're looking at trying to make that more of a seamless transfer by having paved roads, sanitary sewer options, and have that be able to be more easily annexed into those communities. Because that was probably one of the issues you will hear when you, for example, when the city tried to annex a specific neighborhood, was it's going to cost me so much to hook up to sanitary sewer. So if we plan ahead of time where you, when I was 10 years or 20 years ago when I was out in Rapid, they would put in basically a dry sewer connection for the anticipating of sanitary sewer to come through, so they didn't have to tear up everything. It's already all there. So those are some things we can look at when we're looking at some of the criteria. We can identify and address what issues might be a hurdle for future annexation.
Yeah, because it's difficult to annex people that are there. They look at the cost. So
it is.
Was there any consideration given to the eligibilities being more than just adjacent, but maybe within a certain radius of?
There's a lot of discussion about that, and that was something that was, I didn't want to get too deep into the weeds, but there was a lot of discussion about transferring building eligibilities from all over, from a receiving area to an accepting area, or from a transfer area to an accepting area. But when you start doing that, there are a lot of components to consider. I mean, you're talking about economic impacts. You're talking about impacts to townships. We looked at what potentially could happen. There was a lot of discussion, and we looked at what potentially could happen would be basically a land use drain from, let's say, Buffalo Township or Highland Township to Split Rock Township or to Mapleton Township, because there would be a lot of pressure to bring all those building eligibilities that might be 15 or 20 miles away from Sioux Falls right into Sioux Falls, and that would have a significant impact on those townships trying to maintain those roads. But maybe more importantly, it could really impact the future growth for those outer communities where you could have a housing desert, because there'd be no more building eligibilities. They've all been transferred into a growth area. So and it could upset the economic value of those building eligibilities. So at this point, upon the consideration and study and discussion of that density task force really concluded it's really best to, at this point, not alter it a lot, and we would just change it to allow it to be moved into adjacent properties. And you could theoretically continue to move those and move those and move those. So I suppose over time you could have creep of building eligibilities closer and closer, but you could have review of that as well.
And I get that, and that's kind of an extreme example, going from a township and moving it 20 miles, I was thinking maybe 2 miles, but when I look at the zoning criteria, the property has to be 40 acres or more in size with a maximum size of a half acre per lot. So you're talking about 80 homes, residential homes on this 40 acres. And only being able to move transfer eligibilities, I mean, is that even a realistic thing that could happen?
For the scenario you're talking about for a 40-acre parcel, that would be actually rezoning it to like a residential zoning district. So you would not be utilizing building eligibilities to create that development. It would be a rezoning request.
I didn't follow that. So that would not require
No.
transfer of eligibilities?
No.
Okay. Helps me out. Any other questions? Commissioner Bender?
So I'm curious about the accessory dwelling units. You guys are proposing that one accessory dwelling, I'm sorry, my voice is so bad, would be like a separate house. If somebody wanted to add an apartment over their garage, could they do that under our current zoning?
Well, so if you wanted to add a dwelling unit, an identified dwelling unit in your garage or above your garage, it currently would not be allowed, because we would consider that 2 dwelling units. And right now our zoning ordinance only allows 1 dwelling unit per zoned lot. So that's something that we will be looking at. We would need to amend the zoning ordinance, and that's the process we're going to be going through. There are workarounds, but I think it's better to actually just really address the issue, change it. So instead of people saying they're building a craft room above their garage and suddenly it's an apartment at a later date, that we actually just confront it head on and say, hey, we're really doing an accessory dwelling unit.
They're going to call that the Fonzie room.
Yeah. Thanks. Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on now. Consider a motion to authorize the chairperson to sign the 2025 Law Enforcement Services Agreement for 8 communities within Minnehaha County. Good morning, Captain Bosman.
Good morning, Commissioners. Joe Bosman, Minnehaha County Sheriff's Office. This morning in front of you, I have a request to sign 8 agreements for the rural communities that we provide law enforcement services to in Minnehaha County. They consist of Baltic, Colton, Crooks, Del Rapids, Garrettson, Hartford, Humboldt, and Valley Springs. We are the primary law enforcement for those agencies, and so with certain weekly hours that we contract with them, we provide friendly law enforcement services to those towns based on the agreement rate that we have set for the 2025 year, which is $43.23. This dollar amount has been communicated preemptively to these towns throughout the summer so they can plan their budgets ahead of time, so that we are at the time of the year now, at the end of the year, where we sign our side of the renewal agreement, and then I'll get them to each of these towns for their counter signatures, and we can lock in for the next 2025 year. We always communicate it, like I said, with these towns to make sure that they are happy with the services being provided. The hours that are allocated are appropriate for their town's needs. If they are growing, we always want to make sure that we reflect the proper amount of coverage for those towns. And so continued discussions with many of them. But as of this, there is no change for the hours that are being provided from the 24 to the 25 year. So with that, I would open for any questions, comments, public comment, and then ask for a signature on all those contracts.
Public comments on this agenda item. Commissioners, questions?
Mr. Chair, I had one. I see that Joe, we had the rate increase. Did any of the communities change their level of hours, or did you work with them on going higher or lower on the hours, or did all of those stay the same?
The amount of hours stayed the same, and so the rate increase just adjusted the final cost based on that.
That was the only variable that changed, was the cost per
Yes.
hour? Okay.
Yep.
Thanks for that clarification. That's all I had.
I guess my only comment would be is I congratulate the communities, the city councils in those communities, and the sheriff's office. This provides consistent law enforcement, and it's a great use of resources across the county. So good work on this.
Thank you. Thank you.
For a motion?
I'd make a motion to approve the contracts.
Second?
Motion a second. Call the roll.
Benega.
Aye.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Motion carries. Moving on. Consider a motion to declare various sheriff's office vehicles as surplus and authorize transfer and disposal by online auction.
Again, we have finished swapping over equipment into our new patrol vehicles that we're authorized to purchase in this budget year. So as that, any vehicles that are taken off of the patrol fleet, we reuse in-house and reach out to other county departments to see if there is an adequate use for them as well. At the end of the shakeout and everything, we have a couple vehicles that have been identified as useful with emergency management for one of our vehicles and JDC for another vehicle. And then the remaining 4 vehicles we're asking to be surplused for online auction through Purple Wave. That'll be coming up in December. We've had pretty good success with them. I know County Highway uses Purple Wave as well too. It's been able to have a far reach for people to bid. We've never had so many people bid for vehicles in such a wide area, so it's a good win for the county with that. We get some good bid prices on our vehicles that have served their purpose for the county. I do have it broken up, I believe, into 2 actions potentially requested. That way then we can formally have the transfer of vehicles and assets be as one motion, and then the surplus for auction as a second motion.
All right, public comment on this agenda item. So we're looking for 2 actions or 1 action to do 2 things?
We'll just do 2 actions, so if you want to declare Exhibit A.
Okay, so I'll look for a motion, unless there's questions from the commission, declare the vehicles as surplus.
That is my motion.
Second.
Motion is second. Call the roll.
Blindberg.
Aye.
Kipley.
Aye.
Benega.
Aye.
Bender.
Aye.
Karski.
Aye. Motion carries. Now, second motion would be to authorize the transfer and disposal by online auction.
Make a motion to approve that.
Second.
Call the roll.
Benega?
Aye.
Kipley?
Aye.
Bender?
Aye.
Blindberg? Aye. Karski?
Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Captain. Consider a motion to authorize the chair to sign a joint powers force account agreement with the state of South Dakota for payment of federal aid relief funds due to the June flooding. Good morning, Jacob.
Morning, Commissioners. Jacob Mars, County Highway Department. We had some flooding earlier this year in June. The county has gone out and repaired some roads and bridges on federal aid highways. We have one bridge that we are waiting for a permit from the Corps of Engineers on. Otherwise, the work has been done. Federal aid members have come out and looked at the sites with us and agreed on the amount of damages, and we've generated this agreement.
So this is a pass-through then, essentially.
Yeah, so we've already done all of the work except for one site. That one they're going to pay us for on an estimate that we have generated. So we're being reimbursed for work that we did on federal aid roads.
Okay. Public comment on this? Commission questions? Commission action.
Make a motion to approve the reimbursement of those expenses.
Second.
Motion is second. Call the roll.
Benega?
Aye.
Kipley?
Aye.
Blindberg?
Aye.
Bender?
Aye.
Karski?
Aye. Motion carries. Consider a motion to declare Highway Department equipment as surplus and authorize disposal by online auction through Purple Wave.
Commissioners, this is these are items that we just have laying around in the yard out at Highway that we would like to dispose of. We suspect some of them will be over $500, so in lieu of just auction it and the price come in over it, we're just going to auction all of them under this.
Okay. Do we need to do this as two? Okay. Public comment on this agenda item. So I'm going to look for a motion from the commission to declare this equipment a surplus.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Kipley?
Aye.
Blindberg?
Aye.
Bender?
Aye.
Benega?
Aye.
Karski?
Aye. Motion carries. And now look for a motion to authorize disposal by online auction.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Kipley?
Aye.
Blindberg?
Aye.
Benega?
Aye.
Bender?
Aye.
Karski?
Aye. Motion carries. Consider a motion to declare facilities equipment as surplus and authorize disposal through online auction.
Good morning, Commission. Mark Krenz, Facilities Director. I'm requesting authorization to declare the following items surplus and sell online through Big Iron Auctions. This list consists of a John Deere 755 tractor, four-wheel drive with attachments, a John Deere 6x4 Gator, a Cub Cadet zero-turn mower, and a Cub Cadet riding mower. Are there any questions?
Public comment on this agenda item. Questions from the commission? How old is that John Deere tractor? I mean, that seems like a pretty high value.
I don't know exact year, but it's going to be somewhere around that 35 years old.
Wow, okay. All right, look for a motion to declare these items as surplus.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Kipley?
Aye.
Blindberg?
Aye.
Benega?
Aye.
Bender?
Aye.
Karski?
Aye, motion carries. Now look for a motion to authorize disposal through online auction. Do you use Purple Wave also?
I do. I did contact the Highway Department for their recommendation, and they recommended Big Iron for these items.
Okay.
Yep.
Make a motion to approve the disposal.
Second. Call the roll.
Benega?
Aye.
Kipley?
Aye.
Bender?
Aye.
Blindberg?
Aye.
Karski?
Aye, motion carries. Consider a motion to approve updates to the county safety manual. Morning, Carrie.
Good morning, Carrie Deaver from Human Resources. You might recall that on October 22nd, we discussed some changes to the county's safety manual. There were 5 different changes. One was a revision to our disruptive customer behavior section. And then there were 4 new sections. Threat response procedures, tuberculosis testing, hepatitis B vaccination program, and temperature-related illness prevention. And those 4 sections essentially document procedures that we have in place in those 4 areas. Since presenting, I haven't received any questions or concerns, and we're asking your approval today.
Public comment on this agenda item. Commission, turn it over to you.
Make a motion to approve the updates for the safety manual.
I'll second.
Motion is second. Please call the roll.
Kleinberg,
Aye.
Bender,
Aye.
Kipley,
Aye.
Benega,
Aye.
Karski.
Aye, motion carries. All right, moving on to a briefing on the alcohol beverage license compliance check failures. I think that happened on last week. We'll give Kim an opportunity to brief us on this. I think Captain Phillips is here for the same thing, so.
Good morning, Commissioners. Kim Christensen with the Auditor's Office. On Wednesday, November 6th, 2024, the Minnehaha County Sheriff's Department notified the Auditor's Office that they had conducted a compliance check on 43 licenses holding an alcohol beverage license. Of the 2 licenses that failed the compliance check, one was located within Minnehaha County that is licensed by us. MJC Holdings LLC, doing business as Chasers Food and Spirits, did fail the compliance check. They currently hold a retail on-sale liquor license. The other business is located through the local municipality, the city that their business is in. Due to the failure of the compliance check, the county will be required to hold public hearing upon the receipt of the license renewal later this month. For your reference, Chasers did have a violation way back in 2017. So in addition, the licensee may receive a monetary penalty from the Department of Revenue based on the number of violations in the last 2 years. And whether the person who sold the alcohol to the informant has been certified by a nationally recognized training program. So if you have any questions for Captain Phillips or myself.
Public comment? I guess the only question I would have, if you don't mind me leading it off, a number of these are within municipalities that are patrolled. Is that why they were? I mean, how many of these are actually in the county and not in a municipality?
Out of the 43,
Yeah.
so a good number are in the city of Brandon, Dells, Hartford. There's not very many that are outside of those municipalities. There is a handful, and so we have a list we get from Kim all the time, and we try to, at least twice a year, try to hit all the establishments as possible. And so we did one in the spring, and we only had 1 failure this time too, which over the last, I've been 15 years I've been doing this specific role, those numbers have decreased. And so out of the 43, out of those 41, they're doing the right thing. And so we're getting better at that, and we keep pushing with the Department of Revenue and the state, and our deputies are stopping in and trying to get as much info to those clerks about ID reading and everything. But I would probably say 8 are out of those major towns and municipalities that are not inside there. So,
Do you brief the municipalities at a city council meeting on?
if they talk, we have kind of changed our tactics over the years. We'll call them the very next day and inform all those mayors and city councils of what we had, and if they recommend us coming in. I think over the last couple of years, we've been to 2 of them. So, and we'll see if we're going to this year again. So, any other questions?
I just want to thank you for all the list of bars I didn't know about in all these communities.
And so, and they change periodically, and so Kim does a great job of giving us that updated information. I think about 6 years ago, we really updated how we do it, and we're not looking to make any of these businesses fail. We're not trying to trick them. We just make sure that their clerks are doing their due diligence, checking IDs, and I think they've done a really good job over the years. We'd like to have 0. we're getting there, I think, so.
Yep. Yeah, congratulations to the 41 that passed. You know, you kind of focus on the 2 that didn't, but really the 41 that did pass. So additional comments, Commissioner Kipley?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Would you have any guidance for these establishments if, you know, if they're having trouble with this, or maybe they did pass, but they don't have a formal training program? I take it, I think from part of Kim's presentation kind of alluded to nationally recognized training programs, or are there other resources that the state has, things like that we could be giving businesses a positive out of this rather than just harping on the negative like the chair alluded to?
Yeah, so the state does a really good job. They have a website that they offer to the establishments and to the individuals that would be selling the alcohol, and it's really good. And so they've really upped that ante to help these establishments, because as many of you know, some of these small towns, it's difficult to get staff, and so their turnover is pretty high. And so that's something that they really got to work on and press, and trying to make it easy as possible for these clerks to go through this training and get some good quality training. And I think you see, I mean, there's years we had 7 and 8. And so that number's going down. So I think it's working, and I think we're getting closer to the number we want.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Bleinberg.
Thank you. Does failing mean that they served a minor, or is there an inspection of a fake ID involved in that?
No, so we have no fake IDs. These are legitimate South Dakota IDs. They're over 18 years old. Our informants are under 21. So they have to be, otherwise it'd be a different offense for them if they served somebody that was under 18. They're over 18, under 21. So all South Dakota residents that come in, and they always produce their IDs when asked. And so we really try to keep it as simple as possible. They just have to look to make sure, or a lot of establishments now have the scanner. So if you ever go in, they're scanning IDs, so that gives them a little up on maybe not being able to read it or anything like that, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
This was a briefing. Appreciate it. Thank you very much. Moving on to consider a motion to declare 8 hours of holiday pay benefit instead of 4 hours for Christmas Eve. Morning, Tom.
Good morning, Tom Greco, Commission Administrative Officer. So as the motion indicates on the agenda, this request is to make December 24th a full 8-hour holiday. So by policy, the 24th this year would already have the latter 4 hours of the day designated as a policy. And I think in recognition of the great work among county employees throughout the entire year, I think this would be a great award to everyone in the county. Of course, there will be people working that day for those essential services that we have. Also do want to mention, just from a pragmatic standpoint, that the state and UJS is also off on the 24th in their entirety, and also, for that matter, the city of Sioux Falls. I would recommend this as a well-deserved additional 4-hour time off benefit for the employees of the county. Subject to your questions, that's all I have.
Public comment. All right, turn it to the commission.
I'd make a motion to declare 8 hours of holiday pay benefits instead of the 4.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We're now at the end of our agenda and the opportunity for public comment for any non-agenda item. Nobody's running through the door, so we'll turn it back to commission liaison reports. Commissioner Bender.
Just briefly, we did have an accessible housing advisory board meeting last week. Carrie Benz did a great job updating us on some of the challenges they're having with the number of families that are coming in for housing, and the great work that our staff are doing trying to address that. I also just wanted to give a shout out to Jeff Nelson. He's going off that board. He's been on a housing board since I've been on the commission. Just always shows up as a great leader, and I just really wanted to thank him for his service.
Excellent. Any other liaison reports? Commissioner?
I'll just make a quick update on the JJC construction project. Things are going very well, and frankly, right on or ahead of schedule, and financially they have done a great job of managing their budget.
Good to hear. Commissioner Kipley.
Chair, I'll just note that we have crossed over into November, so for our equalization office, you'll recall that the magic date is November 1st, so your assessed value of your property as of that date. So obviously it will take time in that office to go back through, but people that maybe have building projects going on or things like that, knowing that the assessed value date is November 1st is an occasion within the equalization calendar, so just a note there.
All right. Non-action commission discussion.
Mr. Chair, I'll just wish you a happy Veterans Day, a day late. Appreciate your
you.
service.
And I was going to say, Commissioner Kipley and I attended the Veterans Day event at the Alliance yesterday. Very well attended. The mayor and the governor both spoke at it, as did Colonel, help me out, Stacy Koistra. Recognition of some well-deserved veterans for their activities in the community. You know, it's such a heartwarming event. It goes from 10:30 to about, I think we're done at 11:45, a little over an hour. So it's just, I mean, sat by a friend of mine who brought her 2 young sons. I think that's a great thing to expose the younger people to. So they were both, I believe, in middle school. But yeah, great activity and a great way to recognize the veterans and really feel good about your community. So, all right, anything else? We do have a executive session that is jam-packed, so I will look for a motion to enter into executive session for the purposes of South Dakota Codified Law 125-2, 134, and 6.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We will begin executive session in this room here in about, let's give it about 7-8 minutes. Jeez.